The victim didn't see it coming. The suspect is usually found at harvest time, but by then it's too late. The damage is done.
For the past 10 years, Peter Thomison has been collecting evidence, but it's not fingerprints, clothing, or DNA. He's been collecting over 420 samples of abnormal ears of corn.
We got started collecting ears of corn in an effort to develop a better troubleshooting tool, a diagnostic aid for farmers. We thought if we could collect a range of ear samples over time, that we'd have a good basis for making assessments, tools by which we could determine the types of problems, that be in diseases, insects, fertility, something that we could archive and we could go back in time and look at for reference in future years when we encountered similar problems. I'm not aware of any other specialist that's maintained a collection of ears maybe as broadly as mine. Typically, what happens is a farmer or a crop consultant or a professional agronomist, a seed company agronomist, they'll send me an image, an email, and then after that, if it's something that I think is different and abnormal, that I can make it, that maybe warrants being included in the collection because it's something new, I'll ask them to send some samples to us. Once we get the samples, of course, one of the things we're interested in is comparing those samples to samples we have in the lab. We basically apply some of our knowledge about corn plant development. The first critical stage occurs by the time the plant's only about 15 inches tall. And at that time, the corn ear has established the number of kernel rows. So the girth of the ear is established. So a corn ear typically might have anywhere from 14 to 20 kernel rows on it. Several weeks later, the corn plant goes through the flowering process, the pollination process, and at that stage, the plant determines the number of kernels that are actually fertilized. Then about 3 weeks after the pollination process, those embryos that survive are established how many kernels are going to make it through to harvest. If the ear is missing kernels, we have a normal cob, say, but a lot of scattered kernels on it, we know this is probably something associated with the pollination or flowering period. If we have an ear that has, say, 20 kernels at the base of the ear, and only 7 kernel rows at the tip of the ear, we know something happened to it very early in the season because something affected kernel row formation.
Corn has about a 7-day window for the individual plant to flower, whereas soybeans can have 3 or 4 weeks. This leaves the corn plant more sensitive to severe droughts and high temperatures during flowering.
Corn can be stressed by both environmental conditions and by what I'm talking about, our management practices. In corn, we try to push our plant populations, our seeding rates as high as possible because that usually translates into higher yields. But if our populations are too high, that can cause kernel abortion, where the tip of the ear isn't well filled out. If we use certain herbicides at the wrong time or when temperatures are too high, that might have an effect on ear formation. Environmentally, for example, if we have a period of high temperatures or cold temperatures at a certain stage of corn plant's development, that can result in abnormal ear development.
The collection holds 40 different abnormalities with some interesting names: beer bottle syndrome, tip dieback, beer can ear, zipper ear, and kernel red streak, to name a few. Unfortunately, a farmer usually doesn't find the problem until harvest time, and there is nothing that can be done. So Peter created a visual aid to help farmers do their own diagnosis.
The poster was intended as sort of a simple device for use not only by farmers but by ag professionals to give them a quick overview of ear problems that occur during the growing season. We have some pictures in that poster showing disease damage, insect damage, herbicide damage, as well as environmental effects, high temperature, low temperature, cultural practice damage like too high a plant population. These are all evident in that poster, so a farmer can get an idea of the whole range of different types of ear abnormalities that are present. I created the Spanish version because seed company marketing a lot of their corn in Latin America came to me and asked if we could translate it for the South American market, for their South American farmers and agronomists.
Today, farmers have more to worry about than just crop damage.
I think the farmers are very frustrated if they have a problem in their fields. And especially nowadays, with the commodity prices higher, their inputs are much more expensive than they used to be. Not many years ago, corn seed, 1,000 corn seed was about 80 cents to $1. Now it's probably more like $3. So we have input costs are very expensive. And growers are, I think, monitoring their fields more closely. He sees the problem and then he thinks, well, maybe I should correct this problem with a pesticide or additional nutrition or fertility. And if he knows the actual nature of the problem, maybe by sending that sample into us, we can help him in the future years to make sure he's not, say, wasting his money on chemicals.
The future of corn diagnosis is moving from posters to high tech.
I know a company in Iowa recently contacted me about using some of our corn images from our poster in a smartphone configuration where a grower can actually use apps to determine maybe the troubleshoot or diagnose some of his problems.
Even after years of assembling his collection, Peter is always ready for a new case.
I see a problem and I'm intrigued by it. I'm fascinated with it. I think sometimes you have to restrain yourself. You don't want to show too much glee when you see one of these problems because to him it's a nightmare. It's part of my job, and then the other part is sort of satisfying to be able to track down or diagnose what are mysteries.